What if I told you that the stillness you have been avoiding is not emptiness, but the only place where you can finally see clearly? What if the quiet you mistake for stagnation is actually the ground from which everything you have been searching for begins to take root? Most people spend their entire lives running from silence, filling every gap with noise, with movement, with the voices of others, because somewhere deep inside they have learned to associate calm with inaction, with giving up, with being left behind. But there's something you may have already begun to sense, something that arrives not as a thought, but as a subtle shift in the way you breathe when you are alone, a change in the quality of your attention when the world stops demanding something from you. It is the recognition that calm is not the absence of power. It is the presence of clarity. And clarity, when it finally arrives, does not announce itself with fanfare. It comes quietly, like the first light before dawn, and it asks nothing of you except that you stop pretending you do not see it. You may have noticed this in small moments. Perhaps you were in the middle of an argument, and suddenly, without deciding to, you stopped speaking. Not because you had nothing left to say, but because the urge to defend yourself dissolved. You felt your heartbeat slow. You felt the heat in your chest cool. And in that pause, you saw something you had not seen before. You saw that the other person was not your enemy. You saw that the story you were telling yourself about what was happening was only one story among many. You saw that you did not need to win. This was not weakness. It was not surrender. It was the arrival of something deeper than reaction. It was clarity, and it came through calm. Or perhaps it happened when you were making a decision. You have been weighing options for days, maybe weeks. You had made lists. You had asked for advice. You had imagined every possible outcome. And then one morning, while you were doing something mundane, washing dishes or walking to the car, the answer simply appeared. Not as a conclusion you reached, but as a knowing that was already there, waiting beneath the noise. You did not think your way to it. You stopped thinking, and it rose to the surface. This is what calm does. It does not solve problems by force. It clears the space so that what is true can be seen. Nothing about this is accidental. The moments when you feel most centered, most aligned, most like yourself are not random gifts. They are the result of an inner process that has been unfolding beneath your awareness, preparing you, reshaping you, even when you believed nothing was happening. Carl Jung understood this. He spent his life mapping the hidden terrain of the psyche, not as a scientist dissecting a specimen, but as a witness to the living patterns that move through all of us. He saw that the unconscious is not a dark basement filled with repressed fears. It is a fertile ground, always communicating, always offering symbols, dreams, coincidences, inner shifts that guide us toward wholeness. He called this process individuation. It is the slow, often painful journey of becoming who you actually are rather than who you were taught to be. And one of the most misunderstood aspects of this journey is the role of calm. Because calm is not a destination. It is not a state you achieve and then maintain forever. It is a quality of attention. It is the ability to remain present with what is, without collapsing into it or running from it. It is the ground of clarity. In this reflection, I will share with you 7 inner shifts, 7 signs that indicate you are beginning to understand that calm is not passivity, but the deepest form of active awareness. These are not instructions. They are recognitions. You may find that some of them are already happening inside you, quietly, without your conscious effort. You may find that what you once judged as weakness or withdrawal was actually the beginning of a profound reorientation. I invite you to stay with this until the end, not because I will give you answers, but because the process of listening itself is part of the shift. Something in you already knows this. Something in you has been waiting to hear it reflected back. The first sign is that you have stopped needing to fill every silence. There was a time when quiet felt dangerous. When you were alone with your thoughts, you reached for your phone, turned on music, called a friend, anything to avoid the discomfort of simply being. But something has changed. Now, when silence arrives, you do not rush to cover it. You sit with it. You notice the quality of the air around you. You notice the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic, the way light moves across the wall. And in that noticing, you realize that silence is not empty. It is full. It is full of presence. It is full of the world as it actually is, not as you think it should be. This is not numbness. It is not dissociation. It is the beginning of clarity, because clarity requires space. It requires that you stop layering interpretation over experience long enough to see what is actually there. You may have noticed this shift in conversations. Someone is speaking to you, and instead of planning your response while they talk, you simply listen. You feel the texture of their words. You notice the emotion beneath the content. You do not interrupt. You do not correct. You do not offer solutions unless they are asked for. And when they finish, there is a pause. In that pause, you feel something settle inside you. You realize that you do not need to perform understanding. You do not need to prove that you care. Your presence is enough. This is what calm offers. It allows you to be with another person without losing yourself. It allows you to hold space without collapsing into their experience or distancing yourself from it. And this is not passivity. This is one of the most active, most demanding forms of engagement, because it requires that you remain centered in yourself while staying open to the other. It requires that you trust that clarity will come, not through force, but through presence. There is a common misunderstanding here. People often equate calm with indifference. They think that if you are not reacting, you do not care. But the opposite is true. Reactivity is often a defense against feeling too much. When you react immediately, you discharge the energy before it can move through you. You protect yourself from the vulnerability of not knowing what to do. But calm does not mean you feel less. It means you feel more, and you have learned to hold that feeling without being overwhelmed by it. You have learned that your emotions are information, not commands. They tell you something about your inner state, about your needs, about the stories you are carrying, but they do not dictate your actions. This is the difference between being driven by emotion and being informed by it. And this difference is everything. Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to meet the world. It is not false, exactly. It is necessary. But when we identify completely with the persona, we lose touch with the deeper self. We become reactive because we are constantly defending an image. We are constantly trying to maintain control over how we are perceived. But when you begin to access calm, you begin to loosen your grip on the persona. You begin to see that you do not need to perform. You do not need to convince anyone of your worth. You can simply be, and in that being, something truer emerges. Not a fixed identity, but a living presence. This is what clarity looks like. It is not a set of answers. It is a way of being with questions. The second sign is that you have become less interested in being right and more interested in understanding. There was a time when disagreement felt like a threat. When someone challenged your view, you felt your body tense. You felt the need to defend, to argue, to prove. But now, when someone offers a different perspective, you pause. You feel a curiosity arise. You ask questions. You try to see the situation from their angle. This does not mean you abandon your own perspective. It means you hold it lightly enough to consider others. And in that consideration, you often discover something you had not seen before. You discover that reality is more complex than your single viewpoint can capture. You discover that understanding is more valuable than winning. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. It changes the way you move through conflict. It changes the way you make decisions. It changes the way you relate to yourself. Because if you can hold your own beliefs lightly, you can also hold your judgments of yourself lightly. You can see that the story you have been telling about who you are is not the whole truth. It is one version, shaped by memory, by trauma, by the voices of those who raised you. And when you see this, You create space for something new to emerge. Not a better story, necessarily, but a truer one. A story that includes the parts of yourself you have been denying or hiding. This is the work of individuation. It is the work of bringing the unconscious into consciousness, not to eliminate it, but to integrate it. You may have experienced this in moments of self-reflection. You were thinking about a past mistake, something you have judged yourself for, and instead of the usual wave of shame, you felt something different. You felt compassion. You saw that you were doing the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. You saw that the person you were then was not the person you are now. And in that seeing, the grip of the past loosened. This is what calm allows. It allows you to look at your own history without being consumed by it. It allows you to acknowledge pain without being defined by it. And this is not passivity. This is the most active form of healing, because it requires that you face what you have been avoiding, not with judgment, but with presence. There is a paradox here. The more you try to force clarity, the more elusive it becomes. The more you demand that your mind produce answers, the more tangled your thoughts become. But when you relax into not knowing, when you allow yourself to sit with uncertainty, clarity often arrives on its own. This is because clarity is not something you create. It is something you uncover. It is already there, beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the noise of the ego, beneath the fear of being wrong. And calm is the tool that allows you to dig through those layers without violence, without haste. It is the gentle, persistent attention that says, I am willing to see what is true, even if it is not what I want to see. The third sign is that your body has become a source of wisdom, not just a vehicle for the mind. For most of your life, you may have lived primarily in your head. You made decisions based on logic, on what you thought you should do, on what others expected. Your body was something you inhabited, but you did not really listen to it. You overrode its signals. You pushed through exhaustion. You ignored the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, the tension in your shoulders. But now, you have begun to notice. You have begun to feel the way your body responds to certain people, certain environments, certain choices. And you have begun to trust those responses. This is a profound shift. It is the recognition that you are not just a thinking being. You are an embodied being, and your body holds information that your mind cannot access. It remembers things you have forgotten. It senses things you have not yet articulated. When you walk into a room and feel your energy drop, that is not random. When you are with someone and feel your breath become shallow, that is not random. Your body is telling you something. And calm is what allows you to hear it. Because when you are calm, you're not so lost in thought that you miss the subtle signals. You are present enough to notice. You are grounded enough to trust. You may have experienced this in moments of decision-making. You were considering a job offer, a relationship, a move to a new city. On paper, it made sense. Logically, it was the right choice. But something in your body said no. You felt a heaviness. You felt a contraction. And for the first time, you listened. You did not override the signal with reasoning. You did not talk yourself into it. You trusted the no. And later, you saw why. You saw that your body knew something your mind had not yet figured out. This is not mystical. This is biology. Your nervous system is constantly scanning the environment for safety, for alignment, for truth. And when you are calm enough to listen, it becomes one of your most reliable guides. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we have disowned, the impulses and desires we have judged as unacceptable. Often, these parts first make themselves known through the body. A sudden rage that rises in your chest, a grief that sits heavy in your belly, a longing that aches in your throat. These are not problems to be solved. They are messages to be received. And calm is what allows you to receive them without being overwhelmed. It allows you to say, I feel this, and I do not need to act on it immediately. I can hold it. I can be curious about it. I can ask what it is trying to tell me. This is the opposite of passivity. This is deep, courageous engagement with your inner life. There is a practice that can support this shift. It is simple, but not easy. It is the practice of pausing before you respond. When you feel a strong emotion, when you feel the urge to react, you pause. You take a breath. You feel where the emotion lives in your body. You name it, silently. I feel anger. I feel fear. I feel sadness. And then you ask, what does this feeling want me to know? You do not try to change it. You do not try to make it go away. You simply listen. And in that listening, clarity begins to emerge. Not always immediately. Sometimes it takes days, weeks, for the message to become clear. But the practice itself is the point. The practice of staying present with your own experience, without judgment, without rush. This is how you cultivate calm. This is how you access clarity. The fourth sign is that you have stopped seeking validation from others. There was a time when your sense of worth was tied to external approval. You needed to be seen, to be praised, to be chosen. And when that validation did not come, you felt diminished. You questioned yourself. You wondered what was wrong with you. But something has shifted. Now, when praise comes, you receive it with gratitude, but you do not depend on it. And when criticism comes, you consider it, but you do not collapse under it. You have found a center inside yourself that is not swayed by the opinions of others. This is not arrogance. It is not indifference. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself, from having done the inner work of seeing your own patterns, your own wounds, your own gifts. This shift often comes after a period of deep solitude. Not loneliness, but chosen solitude. A time when you withdrew from the noise of the world and turned your attention inward. You sat with the parts of yourself you had been avoiding. You faced the shame, the fear, the grief. And in that facing, you discovered that you were not as broken as you thought. You discovered that you were whole, even with your flaws, even with your mistakes. You discovered that you did not need anyone else to complete you. And this discovery changed everything. It changed the way you show up in relationships. It changed the way you navigate your work. It changed the way you move through the world. You may have noticed this in subtle ways. You were in a meeting and someone dismisses your idea. In the past, you would have felt a surge of defensiveness. You would have argued or withdrawn or spent the rest of the day replaying the interaction in your mind. But now you feel a momentary sting, and then it passes. You recognize that their response says more about them than it does about you. You recognize that your worth is not determined by their opinion, and you move on. This is not detachment. This is clarity. It is the ability to distinguish between what is yours to carry and what belongs to someone else. And this ability is rooted in calm, because when you are calm, you are not so reactive that you absorb every energy around you. You have boundaries. You have discernment. Jung spoke of the self, the archetype of wholeness, the inner center that is not defined by external circumstances. The self is not something you create. It is something you discover. It is the part of you that has always been there, beneath the conditioning, beneath the trauma, beneath the roles you have played. And the journey of individuation is the journey of aligning your conscious life with the self. This does not mean you become perfect. It means you become real. It means you stop pretending to be who you think you should be and start living as who you actually are. And this requires calm. It requires the ability to sit with the discomfort of not fitting into the boxes others have created for you. It requires the courage to disappoint people, to say no, to choose your own path, even when it is not understood. There is a common fear that arises here. People worry that if they stop seeking validation, they will become isolated. They worry that they will lose connection, that they will be alone. But the opposite is true. When you stop performing for approval, you become more authentic. And authenticity attracts real connection. It attracts people who see you, not the mask you wear. It attracts relationships based on mutual respect, not on need. And these relationships are deeper, more nourishing, more sustainable. because they are not built on the shaky ground of external validation. They are built on the solid ground of self-knowledge and mutual recognition. The fifth sign is that you have become comfortable with uncertainty. There was a time when not knowing felt unbearable. You needed a plan. You needed to know what was coming next. You needed guarantees. But life does not offer guarantees. And the more you try to control outcomes, the more anxious you became. But now, something has softened. You have begun to see that uncertainty is not the enemy. It is the space where possibility lives. It is the fertile ground from which new things emerge. And instead of resisting it, you have learned to rest in it. This does not mean you do not make plans. It means you hold your plans lightly. You recognize that life will unfold in ways you cannot predict, and you trust that you will be able to meet whatever comes. This shift is deeply connected to calm, because calm is what allows you to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. It is what allows you to stay present when the future is unclear. It is what allows you to take the next step without needing to see the whole staircase. And this is not passivity. This is faith. Not faith in a religious sense, necessarily, but faith in the process. Faith that life is not random. Faith that there is a pattern, even when you cannot see it. Faith that you're being guided, not by an external force, but by the deeper intelligence of your own psyche, by the self that knows more than your conscious mind can grasp. You may have experienced this in moments of transition. You lost a job, ended a relationship, moved to a new place. And instead of panicking, instead of immediately trying to fill the void, you paused. You allowed yourself to not know what was next. You allowed yourself to grieve, to rest, to simply be in the liminal space. And in that space, something new began to stir. A new interest, a new direction, a new version of yourself. This is the gift of uncertainty. It clears away what is no longer serving you and makes room for what wants to emerge. But you can only receive this gift if you are calm enough to stay present with the discomfort. Jung spoke of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that cannot be explained by cause and effect. He saw these as signs that the unconscious is aligning with the outer world, that the inner and outer are in dialogue. And synchronicities often appear most vividly during times of uncertainty, when you are open, when you are not clinging to a fixed outcome. You think of someone, and they call. You need guidance, and a book falls off the shelf. You are considering a decision, and a stranger says something that speaks directly to your question. These are not accidents. They're the psyche's way of communicating, of reassuring you that you're on the right path, even when you cannot see where it leads. And calm is what allows you to notice these signs. Because when you are anxious, when you are rushing, you miss them. But when you are present, when you are grounded, they become impossible to ignore. The sixth sign is that you have stopped trying to fix everyone around you. There was a time when you believed it was your responsibility to solve other people's problems. When someone was in pain, you felt compelled to make it better. You gave advice. You tried to change them. You took on their emotions as your own. But this was exhausting and did not work, because people do not change because you want them to. They change when they are ready, when they have done their own inner work. And your attempts to fix them were often more about your own discomfort with their pain than about truly helping them. But now, you have learned to hold space without fixing. You have learned to be present without taking responsibility for outcomes that are not yours to control. This is one of the hardest lessons, because it requires that you tolerate the discomfort of seeing someone you care about struggle. It requires that you trust that they have their own path, their own process, their own lessons to learn. And it requires that you recognize the difference between supporting someone and rescuing them. Support is offering presence, offering a listening ear, offering encouragement. Rescuing is taking over, is doing for them what they need to do for themselves, is preventing them from facing the consequences of their choices. And rescuing, though it feels like love, is actually a form of control. It is a way of avoiding your own helplessness by creating the illusion that you can change someone else's life. You may have noticed this shift in your relationships. A friend is going through a crisis, and instead of jumping in with solutions, you simply say, "I am here. Tell me what you need." And sometimes they do not need anything except to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer is your calm presence, your willingness to sit with them in the mess without trying to clean it up. This is not passivity. This is profound respect. It is the recognition that every person has their own inner resources, their own capacity for healing, their own connection to the deeper self. And your job is not to do the work for them. Your job is to trust that they can do it themselves and to be a steady presence while they do. Jung spoke of projection, the way we see in others what we have not yet integrated in ourselves. Often, the urge to fix someone else is a projection of our own need to be fixed. We see their brokenness because we have not yet accepted our own. We try to heal them because we have not yet healed ourselves. But when you do your own inner work, when you face your own shadow, the urge to fix others diminishes. You see that everyone is on their own journey. You see that struggle is not something to be eliminated, but something to be moved through. And you trust that each person has the wisdom they need, even if they cannot access it yet. This trust is rooted in calm. It is the ability to be with what is, without needing to change it. The seventh sign is that you have begun to see patterns instead of isolated events. There was a time when life felt random. Good things happened, bad things happened, and you could not make sense of it. But now, you have started to notice that the same themes keep appearing. The same conflicts, the same feelings, the same choices. And instead of seeing this as bad luck or coincidence, you have begun to see it as information. You have begun to see that the psyche is trying to get your attention, that it is offering you the same lesson in different forms until you finally learn it. And this recognition is the beginning of real change, because you cannot change what you do not see. But once you see the pattern, once you understand the deeper theme, you can make a different choice. This is the essence of clarity. It is the ability to step back from the details of your life and see the larger story. It is the ability to recognize that the argument you had with your partner is not really about the dishes. It is about a deeper need that is not being met. It is the ability to see that the job you keep losing is not about bad luck. It is about a misalignment between your work and your values. It is the ability to see that the anxiety you feel is not about the future. It is about unresolved pain from the past. And when you see these patterns, you stop being a victim of your circumstances. You become an active participant in your own life. You become the author of your own story, not by controlling every outcome, but by understanding the themes and choosing how you respond to them. You may have experienced this in moments of reflection. You were journaling, or walking, or simply sitting quietly, and suddenly you saw it. You saw the thread that connected all the seemingly random events of your life. You saw that every relationship that ended taught you something about boundaries. You saw that every failure taught you something about resilience. You saw that every moment of pain was also a moment of growth. And in that seeing, you felt a deep sense of peace. Not because everything made sense, but because you trusted that there was a meaning, even if you could not fully articulate it. This is what calm offers. It offers the spaciousness to see the bigger picture. It offers the patience to wait for understanding to emerge. It offers the trust that nothing is wasted, that every experience is part of the larger process of becoming. Jung spoke of the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold opposites and create something new from the tension between them. This is not a rational process. It is an organic one. It requires that you sit with contradiction, with ambiguity, with the discomfort of not being able to resolve everything neatly. And calm is what allows you to do this. It allows you to hold the tension without collapsing into one side or the other. It allows you to wait for the third thing to emerge, the thing that is neither this nor that, but something entirely new. This is the creative process. This is how transformation happens. Not through force, but through presence. Not through action, but through awareness. As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to return to where we began. Calm is not passivity. It is clarity. It is the ground from which all action arises. It is the ability to see what is true, to feel what is real, to respond from a place of centeredness rather than reactivity. And this clarity is not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It is something you practice, something you return to again and again, especially when life becomes chaotic, when the noise rises, when the pressure builds. You return to your breath. You return to your body. You return to the quiet center inside you that knows, even when your mind does not. Everything we have explored today, the willingness to sit with silence, the curiosity about other perspectives, the trust in your body's wisdom, the freedom from external validation, the comfort with uncertainty, the respect for others' journeys, the ability to see patterns. All of these are signs that you are cultivating calm. And through that calm, you are accessing a deeper clarity about who you are and what you are here to do. This is not a linear process. There will be days when you feel centered and days when you feel lost. There will be moments of insight and long stretches of confusion. But if you pay attention, if you stay present, you will begin to see that even the confusion is part of the process. Even the darkness is preparing you for light. There is a simple practice you can begin if you have not already. Each day, take a few minutes to sit in silence. Not to meditate in any formal sense, not to achieve any particular state, but simply to be with yourself. Notice your breath. Notice the sensations in your body. Notice the thoughts that arise, and let them pass without following them. And as you sit, ask yourself, what is true right now? Not what you wish were true, not what you think should be true, but what is actually true in this moment. And then listen, not for a voice, not for an answer, but for a sense, a feeling, a knowing that comes from somewhere deeper than thought. This is how you cultivate clarity. This is how you access the calm that is always available, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the endless doing. If this reflection has resonated with you, if you have recognized yourself in any of these signs, I invite you to like this video, to subscribe to this channel, and to share your own experience in the comments. What does calm mean to you? How has it shown up in your life? What are you learning about the relationship between stillness and clarity? Your words may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And in sharing, you also deepen your own understanding. Because the process of articulating what you know makes it more real, more solid, more integrated. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this time to turn inward, to listen, to reflect. This is not passive. This is the most active, most courageous thing you can do. And I trust that whatever brought you to this moment, whatever question you are carrying, whatever shift is happening inside you, it is not random. It is part of the larger pattern. It is part of your journey toward wholeness. And you are exactly where you need to be,